Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. Today's guest is Merlin McCormack. Merlin runs Duke of London, a classic car dealership and restoration business situated in Brentford, London, which also includes a wine bar, pub, pizza restaurant, creative workspaces and much, much more. Merlin has become a prominent figure in the world of classic cars and built a community of like-minded individuals around an impressive industrial warehouse in London, which has hosted events monthly, including car meetups and even a drive-in cinema with 70s-inspired servers on roller skates. Duke of London is a space like no other, and Merlin is doing a fantastic job of inspiring the younger generations to take an interest in vintage cars and bikes and turning once overlooked vehicles into something cool and collectible again. So, without further ado, Merlin McCormack. Perfect. Merlin McCormack, thank you very much for joining me on the show. It's really good to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Reece.
So I'd like to start with a little bit of history for my guests. So if people don't know who you are, who is Merlin McCormack or the Duke of London, as the Instagram handle says?
I'm Merlin McCormack. I am born and raised in West London, and I run a business called Duke of London. I don't refer to myself as Duke of London, I hasten to add. Duke of London is kind of a multifaceted business that ranges from a classic car dealership and restoration business all the way through to F&B. So we've got a wine and cocktail bar, a share in a pizza restaurant, a Fuller's pub, and in addition to that, we have creative workspaces. So Duke of London, under its umbrella, has got at the moment about 60 individual contained creative workspaces that are occupied by generally artists and small creative businesses. And so that's Duke of London.
Perfect. Yeah, I really like what we've done in the space. We'll get onto that in a bit, but I just wanted to start with firstly, Duke of London is quite a cool title, actually. I've tried to sort of take a bit of inspiration and coin myself the Earl of Wiltshire, but people haven't quite cottoned onto it yet, so I'll keep trying. So I understand your father was involved as a coach builder. He worked as a coach builder for a very long time for Rolls-Royce and Mullen Park Ward.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Do you think that's where your passion for wheeled objects and motor vehicles, bikes and stuff like that came from?
Yeah, without a shadow of doubt. So Dad has had a restoration business my entire life, and as you said, he's trained professionally as a panel beater. He started when he was 16 as an apprentice at Mullen Park Ward on the factory line, building at that point in time Rolls-Royce and Bentley Corniches. He then very quickly progressed through the production line rankings and ended up as the final inspector when he was younger than me, looking after some serious stuff, royal family stuff, etc. And he's then applied those skills to his own business, started up, I think he opened it on his 30th birthday, his business, and then kind of snowballed from there. So he's been going now for about 35 years on his own. So being brought up around his workshop, summer holidays spent there sweeping the floors and trying to earn some pocket money and whatever else. I think falling in love with cars was kind of inevitable. My mum, away from my dad's business, also had an interest in cars. Her parents were very kind of automotive orientated, and her dad was a team rider for AGS motorbikes, a trials team rider and things like that. So she had kind of the petrol head blood as well. So she always had weird and wonderful cars when we were growing up, and between her and Dad, it was inevitable.
So my parents had a couple of cool cars, but I didn't realise they were that cool until I got to about this age.
No, you don't.
And I was like, I wish you still had that. Why'd you get rid of? She had like a 190E. Yeah. Dad had like a
wicked
C class, and she had an R129 SL as well, which was really cool. And someone wrote it off, and I was absolutely gutted because I was there when someone wrote it off. She was parked up, and someone drove into the back of the car as it was parked up on the side of the road in this sort of rural part of Sussex, and it was just horrible. I just saw it. It was almost like slow motion.
That's the worst feeling. Yeah, that's the worst. I think as kids, we were kind of like, we were sort of, my brother and I, I'm speaking for him, but we were a bit embarrassed always because we had like, the sort of clapped out old cars until you get to an age where you really start to appreciate what these things are. It's funny how things change.
When does clapped out become cool, sort of thing?
Yeah, quite. I don't think it's still a very vague line there.
Yeah, 100%. Then you got your first car. I believe it was age 11. Is that correct? Peugeot 205.
Yeah, that was
That's
So
pretty early to be
that
getting a
was
car.
silly. It was. I mean, I've been literally scrimping and saving. I think I'm probably getting like £5 a day for sweeping Dad's workshop just to sort of keep me out of the way, probably.
Yes.
And I saved up some money, and eBay was kind of new at the time. People didn't really know how to use it or what it was. So when I caught wind of it, I was fascinated by it, and I spent hours on the computer, the internet. Yeah, I would have been. What would this have been? 2003 or four. So I was fascinated with the internet, and spent hours and hours on it, researching cars. Fanatical about cars, and started to see that cars were starting to. I don't know whether they opened eBay up at that point in time to cars or whatever, but started to see that there was stuff coming through. I was always searching for like spares and repairs cars or scrap cars, because there'd be something that might be listed as scrap, but it wasn't actually scrap. And lo and behold, I came across this Peugeot 205 that had been it failed its MOT for a steering rack. So the guy put it up there, just scrap Peugeot. So I clicked on that, ran home, mum, you've got to see this. And I think I pestered her into, like, obviously I was too young to have an account or be able to bid on it. So sort of forced her into letting me bid on this thing. And I won it for £32 and a penny, and it was absolutely fuck all wrong with it. So it needed a new steering rack, but it ran and drove fine. It just had a bit of play in the rack. So we went to a scrapyard in Hayes, got a new rack for it. One of my dad's mechanics helped us fit it, and it passed its MOT, and off it went. And that then became a kind of fascination of mine. Naturally, I felt like king of the world going out to school on the Monday, being like, I've bought a car. Everyone thought it was bollocks. Like,
Yeah,
it's just like, this kid's mental. But yeah, I don't think it had quite the impact I'd hoped with my friends. They were just like, this kid's weird. And they sold that for a profit, and then carried on in a very loose way, carried on kind of bouncing the ball, and it snowballed into a business eventually.
Yeah, so I was going to ask where the idea for Duke of London came from, because I know you've obviously had a passion for cars for a long time and bikes and things like that. But was there a sort of a standout moment to you that you thought, actually, I could really turn this into a business?
Yeah. I think I spent a lot of my certainly, this was obviously when I built the first car was when I was 11. So kind of it was a slow burn for the first 3 or 4 years. But by the time I started doing my GCSEs at school, I'd been given a laptop to use at school, because I can barely read my own handwriting, let alone the teachers. So I managed to get onto the school's Wi-Fi, which no one's supposed to do, and just spent every lesson at the back of the classroom just trying to find cars to buy, or motorbikes to buy, or scooters or whatever. So I did absolutely no work, scrimped through like almost predicted grades on my GCSEs. And by the time I hit sixth form college, it was like all I was doing. I might as well have not gone. I was truant, because I was like running off to buy and sell. At that point, it was 50 and 125cc mopeds, because I could ride them, move them around myself with the CBT at that point, which saved me a huge cost of transport, which I'd incurred with all the cars up to date. So yeah, Vespers and Lambrettas and things like that and Gilera runners, and all the chabby fun stuff too. So yeah, I kind of ducked out of college and really focused on it, but was still doing college 2 or 3 days a week. Managed to get myself into a place that I could do 2.5 days a week at college, and spend the rest of the time either working part-time jobs or focusing on the cars and the bikes. When I finished college, I started working a short stint as a sort of, do you know the first half of Wolf of Wall Street, when it's really shit and they're like in a boiler room? It was basically working in it might as well have been a sort of penny stocks call center. It was called a private equity firm, but I think that was quite a jazzy way of looking at it. So I did that for a year. I was quite good at it. I absolutely hated it, and started working for Dad in a bit of a lost sense, while still kind of brokering the odd car deal for a friend, or selling my own bits and buying and selling stuff. Dad had never wanted to or tapped into the side of his business where you had this bank of clients who would eventually inevitably all become friends of his. It's a very kind of personable business. It's not conventional by any stretch of the imagination. And they would come to him saying, Lance, I'm thinking of selling this, or I'm looking to buy one of these. And often he'd refer them to a dealer or a friend of his who had one, and maybe make a kickback off of it, or maybe not. I was like, you're crazy. You're wasting so much opportunity here. And I'm not saying you exploit these people, but equally, if you want to provide them a service, you'd be good at it. And he's like, I'm not interested. And so we worked together on a couple of deals, and it very quickly became apparent to me that I really enjoyed it. People seemed to be trusting me with like obscene amounts of money to buy the stuff for them or sell the stuff for them, and very happy with the service they were receiving. So I thought, fuck it, let's formalize this into a business. What's the worst that can happen? When Instagram launched, we were sat in in a lesson at school, ignoring the teachers as we often did, and my best mate at the time had said, "I'm going to set mine up as whatever it was." And I sat there for hours and hours. What should I make my Instagram? What should I make my Instagram? And I came up with Duke of London, and I googled it quickly to see who is the Duke of London. And there was the sort of title was offered to Winston Churchill after the war, but he was sort of too humble to accept it. So no one had ever been officially awarded this title. So with all the arrogance for 16-year-old, I went, yeah, I'll have that. Yoink! And so that I figured at that point we'd kind of start to grow the social media a little bit just out of fun and stuff. So I thought, well, let's exploit that, carry on running with the brand as it wasn't really a brand, but just the identity of it, and named the business after the Instagram. About 6 months later, we took on our first premises, which was adjacent to my dad's workshop, and then it just kind of grew arms and legs.
Excellent. I've seen, so the Instagram handle thing is quite interesting because I've seen a couple that are actually, someone had at London, which I found out the other day. Like, that's quite a cool one
David,
to get. Yeah. I saw that.
He comes to our events. He's a really nice guy. Yeah, but he's lucked out. It's become his life. It's amazing.
Yeah, so I had a look at his account, and then there was another one I saw the other day on Instagram, which was I thought I'd been in tears for a while. It was just at ass. I was like, I don't really know what you're going to do with that handle, but fair enough.
Great. Yeah, good luck to you.
Yeah. You got to do something with that, surely. Yeah, the London one is quite cool.
Quite.
So, I mean, I've listened to a few podcasts and a few entrepreneurs and things like that. There's a lot of people that say going from like a salaried job to launching your own business is like one of the hardest things they've ever done. But it sounds like for you, it was a bit of an easier transition in that you weren't really interested in the sort of corporate stuff before the private equity stuff, really. So was that quite an easy transition, or did you still think it was quite difficult to come away from that? I have a salary and now I kind of need to really work for it.
Yeah. I think to be blunt, I was so unhappy in that job that anything was better. I mean, I went from, working in a Berkeley Square office, just not Berkeley Square, but like a Mayfair office, thinking it was Jack the Lad and everything, and beers in the pub on a Friday night, and to like grinding rust out of cars for my dad overnight. And I was so much happier doing that with Dad than I was working there, kind of pretending to be someone that I kind of thought I wanted to be. But I kind of been conditioned, I think, by the school environment and a lot of my friends who'd gone straight to university where I hadn't. And I sort of felt like I was sort of, in many ways, one step ahead of them, because I was like, I've got the job you want when you come out of university, and I'm only 18 and I'm Jack the Lad. And it was like, actually, no, this is really shit. I don't think I've ever been so unhappy in myself. So anything away from that environment was going to be a blessing. And then to realize quite quickly that I could work for myself properly. And I was like, oh shit, I'm actually doing all right out of this. I'm living off of it. I'm not making a fortune, but I'm kind of financially stable at a young age. Naturally, I was spending every penny that I made because I was young and reckless. I don't regret any of it, apart from some of it. But it was like, shit, okay, well, maybe I don't need that corporate structure. Maybe I don't need the salary reliability. There have obviously been times where I've like cried at night wishing I'd gone down that route, thinking, shit, this would have been so much easier if. But it's been such an adventure, I wouldn't take any of it back.
I think perfectionism holds a lot of people back as well, in terms of they feel like they have to get to a certain stage before they pursue the thing they want to do. So if I wanted to, it's the same with this podcast. Like I was like, okay, I need to have the best camera setup. I need to have the best mic. I need to make sure I've got the best editing software and things like that. And there was a few times I listened to people and they just said, just need to just get it out there. Just need to start.
Yeah. I'm so guilty of that so many times, and invariably it never gets to the perfection point when I actually kick something off and I'm like, oh, what about that? And what about that? No one cares. And like, obviously there's things in your mind, and you start to realize, and even with like the factory, the place that we exist in now as a business, there's so many bits of the building I'm almost embarrassed about. Oh God, because we built this as a really short-term thing. It was only supposed to last like 18 months. We've been here for 5 years. We've been really lucky with stay of executions before its redevelopment and stuff. But there's like bits of wallpaper. I'm like, oh God, we need to sort that out. And everyone's like, no, it's charming. It's like the quirks of the place. And I'm like, okay, like maybe it is. I don't. Yeah, it's funny though, because you're right with like, using the podcast analogy. It's so true. You kind of like you're fearful of like, oh, people won't take me seriously without that, or if I don't do this, until you put yourself out there and put your neck on the line, you won't know. And ultimately, if you do that and you do half a decent job of it, people will respect you even more. I think the kind of grassroots element to it.
I've been trying to think of like a way to describe that or sum it up. And have you heard of the whole sort of I'm the main character kind of theory? So I wanted to try and develop like a bit of a containerization for what that is. It's sort of like the main character theory. Like you think, everyone's going to think you're a bit of an idiot. You look like a bit of a dick. Everyone's thinking you're a bit cringe because you're talking on the camera. You've got this podcast. The reality, everyone's too concerned about what they've got going on in their own lives. They might like have a look and go, oh, he looks a bit cringe, but then they'll forget about it within half an hour. So you kind of just need to just get on with it anyways. And that's the sort of approach I'm trying to take now and doing this and just exploring different things, going up and asking guests if they want to come on and things like that. So, and I think it's helpful.
That's the only way to do it, right? No, fair play to you. I think it's a really cool thing that you're doing. I don't think it's certainly it's not something like I said at the beginning of this. It's not something that I would even know where to start with. So I'm in awe of you, mate. It's a great thing. Keep it up.
Well, thank you. Everyone says I talk too much anyway, so I thought I might as well put the
what perfect job for it, right?
Exactly. I thought I might as well try and do something with it. That innate talent I got for just talking the hind legs off a donkey. But yeah. So what do you think has been the biggest learning curve for you in terms of launching Duke of London to where you are now, and obviously looking to the future for things you're going to do with scaling up, things like that as well?
That's a good question. What's been the biggest learning curve? I think just from a sort of a very selfish perspective, it's been kind of perhaps it would have been better to try and master some of the art of delegation a little bit sooner. I think there's a big part of me that feels like I've aged exponentially and probably taken years off my life through fear of letting go of certain facets of the business. Some of it, perhaps, I've kind of given myself a hard time, and rightly so. And perhaps if I had delegated things sooner, it wouldn't have had the same effect, or perhaps it would have impacted quality or the experience of the customers or whatever else. But yeah, I think if I was to start again or to learn from mistakes per se, it would be delegate, and obviously delegate to the right people, which is a skill in itself. But to work out what your strengths are and not try and cover all bases. It was about 3 years before I actually even employed anyone else to do anything for me, really. And that almost came, not almost too late, but kind of it was getting to the point where I was probably on the brink of burning out. I was like, everything was under one kind of one brain, and it was also limiting because there's only so much that you're capable of, and that takes a lot of humble pie to kind of stomach. I think you need to realize that, okay, fine, that this is your baby and your whatever, but you need to let go of some of it in order for it to grow. Otherwise, you're just going to suffocate it and stunt its development. But yeah, that'd be my kind of biggest advice to anyone else.
Did you take a sort of a pre and post, like when the presidents go into office and they take like a photo of themselves when they enter versus where they leave, just to see how much you aged in that time?
Funnily enough, I saw a photograph of myself from around the time that we opened the factory recently, and it was just crazy in such a short period of time to watch. It's almost like a flick book of watching it. Like I probably visually, I feel outwardly like I've aged 10, 15 years. And when I tell people how old I am, they're always like, oh, wow. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. No. That's like, yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Much obliged.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers.
But I think that's an interesting point, though, with the delegation thing. And I think I would imagine a lot of people struggle with that, especially when they get to positions of management, because they're used to building their own sort of ideas and they know the quality of their work. And it's almost like stepping into the unknown, isn't it, really? Because you don't know. You don't know what other people are capable of. You kind of know, but roughly from other people and things like that and their CV or whatever it is. But you don't actually know if what they're going to do is going to be in line with your vision. So I can imagine I could see that being...
Yeah, exactly. That's just it.
I can see that being why it was quite difficult for you.
Yeah. It really just comes down to... And I've got this... I think it's owning your mistakes as well, because I've got this wrong a couple of times. And it's not necessarily a reflection of these people in particular, but there's been times where I've got the kind of person I delegated to wrong, and you kind of... You miss... your expectations of someone can be misread. And I think it's that trying to understand someone, especially if you've just employed someone who's applied for a job. You don't know them. Like, you're basing this all off of the way they've presented themselves and the way they want to be interpreted. And it's a tricky thing to try and act as the HR department and try and route through to the person at the bottom. And ultimately, we're not a big business, and I think as a small young business without any sort of financial independent backing or whatever, the other big part of it is the kind of costs associated with it, because you've got to balance: is this person A, going to cover their own costs, but B, going to ultimately make the business more money by being here? Is it going to free up more time so I can go and develop other things and whatever else? That's impossible to quantify until you don't know until you've tried it. Much like starting a podcast, unless you start recording, how can you possibly tell?
Yeah, it's almost like that funnel where you start as a wide, quite generic, and then you refine it as time goes on to kind of what you want.
Yeah.
So you spoke about having over 60 sort of businesses in Duke of London. It seems like you've built a pretty phenomenal sort of community around that. I've not actually been down yet. I've been meaning to go, but it's in Brentford, is that, I believe?
You must come.
Is it Brentford? Yeah.
Yeah, Brentford in West London, yeah.
So you said you got a pub, you got a wine bar.
Yeah.
I've noticed, obviously, the whole car sales and stuff is classic cars mainly, and bikes and things like that. I know you've got art on the walls that you sell and things along those lines. Is there a particular era that is either your favourite or that inspires you the most?
I think, to be honest, it's a real tricky one. I'm really sort of fickle with what I like and what I stock, and a lot of it is stuff that both myself and the team appreciate. And every so often we'll get a car in, and I'll be like, "God, why have you consigned that?" Or vice versa. They'll be like, "Are you sure you lost the plot?" And I'm like, "No, trust me, these are going somewhere." So it's really kind of personally subjective. I think we've got a real penchant for naturally with the sort of market trends of the stuff from the 80s and 90s at the moment. I still love the pre and post war stuff. I love the Americana stuff, hot rods, custom cars. But there's not, commercially, it wouldn't be viable, I don't think, at the moment, sadly, to just exist dependent on especially the level of price point that we occupy, which is generally 20 to 100 grand. It's a tougher sell. The cars are great, but the market has dipped a bit. There's no secret. But we've got it's kind of the means to go and be selective with what comes in. We've only got so much space here. We can't kind of overstock ourselves and try and take too much risk, because we've got a finite amount of space to occupy with these cars. So if we ended up stocking stuff that I just liked, we wouldn't make any money, frankly. So we have to be a little bit open-minded. But yeah, it's a tough call.
Yeah, definitely. I like the plonkers. Looks quite cool as well. It looks very sort of Playboy-esque, I would say, with the...
Yeah, but that's all George's. Georgia very kindly designed that for us, and I think she's an amazing job of it. But you're right, it's got that a kind of loose brief was like, I want it to feel like a first class 70s airport lounge, and she's absolutely nailed it. It's all like very kind of mid-century soft furnishings and very glowing curtains and lights, and it's really cool. She's done a really, really good job with it, and the team that run it are phenomenal as well.
Awesome. I've noticed there's a lot more automotive and sort of motorsport themed cafes, and not so much bars, but cafes definitely, that are popping up around the UK. So there's obviously Caffeine and Machine, that was quite a popular one. I think there's a few in Sussex that I know of, like Fuel and Talk, I think. I've been down to a couple. I think Caffeine and Machine's pretty good. But I don't think any of them come close to what you're doing or what you're trying to do. Do you have any theories on why or what particularly sets you apart from the rest and the competition, so to speak? Although there may not be competition to you.
I think, to be blunt, I'm hugely in awe of what all of those guys have achieved. You're right, it is different to what we're offering, but they've absolutely nailed their own sectors, and I think they're doing a really great job of it. And I'm so glad that these things exist, because ultimately it's all complementary to each other. The bigger the car community is, the more we all benefit. Where I think they serve as purpose-built cafes or driving destinations per se. Obviously, we're a little bit different from that, and I think that kind of is where we do differ in the car face of it. This place, I want it to be more of a... there's no pretense. It doesn't need to be you can come here just with a family and the dog on a Saturday afternoon. You can come into for your car. You can come in for a pizza. There's no angle. It's not, which has its pros and cons, obviously. We only have enough space in the yard, the forecourt, the place to park on a busy day when we're open for business, maybe 20 or 30 cars, and on an event day up to about 70 if they're door to door. So we don't have an abundance of space either. So we know we couldn't exist here as a cafe in a machine type driving destination. Also, we're in London. People aren't, other than people who are local or are heading here for an event. I'm not expecting people to come here on a wild Cotswolds driving tour. It wouldn't happen. We're too far away and inside of it. But equally, we are in London, and there's a huge car scene here that isn't catered for. So without it being exclusive to anybody, it is kind of London's clubhouse for the automotive stuff. I want it to be open to everyone, regardless of what car they've got. If they haven't got a car, they just want to come and appreciate stuff. As long as they're all well behaved and respectful, come on in. With that, we've policed it quite well. I know that sadly, Cafe Machine have obviously had a load of issues with people driving and the way they arrive and leave the venue and stuff. But because we're quite in a built-up area, we don't really have these issues, and it's been a little bit easier for us on that front because we don't have the numbers coming and going. We don't have the queue of people stood on the pavement at the car meets waiting for everyone to leave and stuff, because we don't allow it. It is different, but it kind of intentionally.
Are you concerned at all about the impact of, I don't want to get political at all, but just to touch on it, the impact of ULEZ and things like that? Obviously, there's a daily charge now for driving in London, which is fairly astronomical. Are you worried at all that's going to affect your business?
I think the proof's in the pudding. We had an anti-ULEZ drive out a couple of weeks ago on the bank holiday Monday, the very last day before it all kicked in the extension zone that we're currently situated in. And it was well attended, and everyone's of the same opinion. The whole thing's a bit of a farce and whatever else. And again, not to get too political, but I thought the only way that I'm ever going to, people go, aren't you worried? What are you going to do? And I don't know. I really, do I need to be worried? It will remain to be seen. And we had we do a monthly charity car meet on the third Sunday of every month called Classics and Cake. We had our first one last Sunday, and it was sold out and oversubscribed. So I was like, well, there you go. I'm not going to bother losing any sleep over this. And the sad reality of it is frankly, the local authorities know that we're just going to pay it if we want to do it. It's not great, and it's ridiculous. And the whole thing's a farce, in my opinion. And it's pinching the people who theoretically are worse off at the moment with the cost of living crisis and everything else. So I'm totally opposed to it. Not opposed to cleaner air, of course, but the way that the scheme's been rolled out is pretty deplorable. But the car enthusiast community, thankfully, whilst it will obviously cause us some drop-offs, seemingly is still interested in coming here. And I was very careful to note what was arriving last Sunday. Is it just stuff that's compliant or exempt? And it wasn't. It was the usual stuff. Lots of 80s and 90s stuff that is nowhere near compliant, but people are paying the £12.50 because they still want to come. Ultimately £12.50 is a lot of money for some people, but to some people who want to come to our events, it might not be. So I'm hoping it doesn't deter too many people, but I am sad for the people who now will take a stance on it. But unfortunately, there's nothing that we personally can do about that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And it's like there's a Stoic saying where it's like, don't punish yourself before something happens. And it sounds like you've kind of taken that approach where don't worry about it, don't suffer in the anticipation of something that might not happen.
What's the point? Yeah, what's the point? Yeah, I was obviously secretly quite nervous about it, but thankfully I've seen, touch wood, one event in. I can't base it all off one event either, but so far so good.
Yeah. So is there anything in the pipeline for Duke of London next that you can discuss? There may be something that you can't discuss, but be interested to know.
Yeah. There's a couple of sort of top secret bits, but they'll come to light soon enough, I'm sure. In the nearest of futures, we've got loads of events going on over the course of the autumn and winter. We've been given a stay of execution for the 10th or 11th time, which I'm very, very grateful for, to our developer the developer who owns this building, our landlord. They have given us until at least mid-March here. So we're going to make the most of potentially the last 6 months that we have here. We may roll on again. That at the moment, I'm kind of bookmarking that in my head that could be D-Day. And with that, they've also incredibly, I don't know, it's been an incredible kind of journey with them. We've got a great working relationship with them, and they can see, I think, the value of having the community of the businesses here and the attraction of the footfall and everything else. So together we've designed a new permanent home for Duke of London with the current landlord of this place in the new building that's about 500 metres away from the current building. Long lease, so we don't have to worry. We can actually plan for the future. We're no longer on a 3-month rolling term, which has caused many a sleepless nights over the last 4 or 5 years. So yeah, that should come. It should be opening at the end of March. That's the plan. We get in there at the beginning of the new year and start our fit out. And yeah, I'm really excited. It's a space that's purpose built for cars. The building we're in at the moment is an old factory. It was never designed to have vehicles driving in and out of it. It's an absolute nightmare to get stuff in and out of. We make it work. It looks cool, but logistically, it's a massive headache for me and the staff. We spend half our day moving cars. The new place, it's a really cool space right on the river, like sort of triple height concertina glazing overlooking the river with our own forecourt again on the river. The F&B stuff, so the cafe, bar, restaurant will all move over there, and in the summer we can open up and have seating outside and people can bring their cars down still. And yeah, it's going to be really cool. We're expanding our storage space, so we store cars for people. We're doubling our footprint for that within that building as well. And yeah, we're doing it all to a different standard than obviously we did this place on a temporary basis. So I'm really, really excited for that. But around what else have we got going on? Around Christmas time, we're opening a pop-up store here, so merchandise pop-up store. So we're teaming up with some really cool brands that I think are in line with what we're doing. People that you'll know and recognise, no doubt, and all kind of loosely automotive themed. And we're going to open a physical shop over Christmas as a bit of a proof of concept, and pretty transparent about these things. If it works, then we'll carry the concept over into the new space on a permanent basis. I think it should be quite good because the types of people and the brands that we're working with don't actually really have a tangible presence in London, but they're all very well appreciated and by the car community far and wide, and some of them are based in the States and Europe and stuff, so they don't really have much of a footholding here. So hopefully this will open their horizons up on a bigger level as well. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Georgia's about to crack on and design the interior of that and then the car park as well, so she's very busy for us, obviously doing her own thing as well, but grateful to her for all of her hard work and help, because her kind of vision of the aesthetic is kind of very heavily influenced by plonkers and things like that. So I'm looking forward to carrying that over and seeing how she develops that. But yeah, that's where we're at.
That sounds amazing. I'm really excited to see what you do with the new studio, new sort of space. Does that mean you're going to have boats as well when you have the on the riverfront? We'll see some boats arriving in the showroom as well.
I'd love some like 80s cigarette racing boats or something. That would be like the dream, just like mounted on the banks of the river. But annoyingly, it's like a 30-foot drop at low tide and a 15-foot at high tide drop from our terrace onto the river. So I don't know how well we're going to get a floating pontoon down there. Just have to fashion something out of some old barrels or something.
Be like some lifeboats instead.
Yeah, actually.
Have you still got your little boat? I know you did like a JPS sort of little wooden one. I've seen you a few summers ago, I cruising down the river.
Yeah. So George and I bought a wooden one that it used to be my dad's when we were kids. We never went on the water in it. He just had it sat in the yard behind his old workshop that we played in and pretended we were on the water in as kids. George and I bought that about 5 years ago. That's almost 5 years later, nearly restored. We put it on the water for one summer and then took it off and have had the whole deck redone. Kind of don't buy a boat. It just don't do it. They're horrific. Even cars are bad. And then I built this little, I bought a 12-foot 70s, 80s Fletcher fiberglass speedboat as well, with a little outboard on the back, and we painted it all up and liveried it up as a JPS kind of cigarette-inspired boat. Sold it to a couple of guys who had it a couple of years, and I only recently just bought it back. I'd planned to have the wooden boat ready for this summer, but it wasn't, so I ended up buying this thing back. None of these things are worth any money of any note whatsoever. They're just like pocket money boats, but I love them. They're so much fun. We get to bounce up and down the Thames on it. And, it's good fun.
It's not always about the price, though. I think with a lot of things, I'm
No, I know, but when you start talking about boats,
yeah. I mean, I'm quite heavily involved in sort of the watch community and things like that. So I'm part of a group where you go in to kind of meet they normally have something on at least once a month. It's called Red Bar. I don't know if you've heard of it at all.
Yeah.
So they've done some sort of events around London. You do stuff at boutiques, but then they do one like just going to the pub and meeting up. People get to show their either latest purchases and things like that. And some people come in with £100 watches. Some people come in with $100,000 watches, and everyone's curious to see what everyone's got. There's no sort of element of snobbery or anything like that. So I think it is quite nice. You can get a lot of enjoyment. I guess the point I'm trying to make is you can get a lot of enjoyment out of things without spending a huge amount of money. which I think is a common misconception people have.
Yeah, definitely.
EVs, what's your opinion on those? Because I know there's some interesting. I've seen Lunaz Design. They've done some pretty cool stuff. And when I spoke to them at the concourse, they had some interesting reasons for doing it. They said they weren't taking cars off the road to convert them. They were saving cars that were destined for the bin, effectively. But then there's also, I think you feel quite strongly about a certain Ferrari that's been converted to
no comment
to an EV, which I saw at Goodwood. But I'm just interested in your general consensus on the whole thing.
I think on the kind of the more conventional EVs, your Teslas and Hyundais and stuff, I think obviously it serves a purpose. I can't help feel like there's an element of once removing the problem at the moment, while the whole power network for it is still fueled by fossil fuels and everything else. I mean, and especially the manufacturing process for both the cars and the batteries and the kind of disposable nature and shelf life of the cars themselves, it's a bit farcical. I think there is obviously this is going to take time to adjust and develop, and there will come a point where hopefully the grid can rely on more sustainable energy sources, and it can truly be a greener alternative. And with that, the build quality of these cars should hopefully be improved and the technology advanced in such a way that they can be developed and adapted, not just at the end of a 3-year lease, essentially thrown in the bin. You're seeing like a 2015 Tesla now. You can't give them away. The batteries are old. People won't stand by them. You can't get warranties and things. And I'm paraphrasing, but the general gist of it is all heading in a pretty negative direction. It's like getting a new iPhone every year. We don't think twice about doing it. We never really think about the implications of ecologically of what we're doing, because it's not being sold to us as a green product. The whole hypocrisy for me at the moment about the EVs is like, well, look, you're branding this up as something that's going to be beneficial to the environment, and yet we're here again in a 2, 3, 4 year lease going, okay, cool, there's the keys back next. Like, there's no cognitive association with what then happens to that car, and a lot of care. And I'm again generalizing massively here, but you get the gist. I think going forward, the Bamford's development of the hydrogen stuff is probably where I would hedge my bets. I think there's going to be far more, seemingly, if it goes according to plan as it's going seemingly so far for them, I think that's a far more obviously sustainable route of production. And then onto the classic converted stuff, I think if you're right, if they're taking stuff that's destined for the bin, then fine. Or if it's something that perhaps isn't defined by the character of its petrol engine, great. I'm thinking something like I love driving them for the fact they're a peppy little engine, but like an old Fiat 500, if you or a Fiat Jolly, for instance, turn that electric, great. I totally get it. Little small journeys, whatever. But to touch on the sensitive subjects of the certain Ferrari, then I drove, I won't name names, but I drove a Porsche being converted, and I was it was like, it was very well built, beautifully designed, and I'm sure and I know they're doing commercially very well with it, and I totally get it, but I couldn't personally help but feel like, right, where's the soul? Like, where's the it drove well, it's fast, it was whatever, but I'm still looking for more. I'm like, well, I want to hear it. I'm a complete and utter like Asbo yob for like loud exhaust as well. So I'm like, I don't want something synthetic, for God's sake. I don't want some artificial exhaust, not even in a petrol car where you've got people beaming sounds through the speakers. And then you've got these things that are silent. And let's be real, in a classic car, you can invariably then hear every creak, rattle, shake they all had anyway, but has been masked by the sound of the engine. Like my Testarossa, if that was silent, I know it would sound like a bag of fucking nails. Like, I know it would.
Yeah.
I'm not right now, because you can't hear it. I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I like. Yeah, definitely the old defender rattles that you got going on in your Testarossa.
Yeah, quite.
I understand what you said about the smoke and mirrors, almost, isn't it? And I'd quite like to get someone who's in the industry to come on the podcast and just expand on some of these points, because
set the record. I'm no specialist in that. I don't want to be misquoted on it, but it's like, it just doesn't seem to make sense on the surface. It's like, and I've done pretty thorough research on it. I'm like,
I'm of the same opinion, because it's not just the emissions from the car. You're looking at the life cycle of the whole car. You've got batteries to mine, batteries to dispose of. You've got, where's the power generation? If everyone's driving an electric car, energy demand on the grid's going to go up. How's that being produced? Well, if you've got renewable sources,
it's not at the moment,
and the wind's not blowing, you're going to have all the sort of mass wind turbine farms that are going to need to be built, and they've only got like a limited efficiency, and they're quite weather dependent and things like that. So yeah, I would be really interested to see from someone who's in the industry, who's quite heavily involved with it. I think trying to get Andy Palmer on would be quite good as well. So he used to be the CEO of Aston Martin in here, so, and he's quite heavily involved in that and quite a big advocate for EVs. So I think he would be quite a good person to get on. So watch this space. I don't know if I'm big enough to get him on, but we'll see.
Aim high, man.
Don't ask, don't get, do you?
Aim high.
Absolutely. So in terms of events coming up, what are the key events that people should come and have a look at, come and get down to? Where can they find out more information?
Yeah, so in the very near future, this Sunday really proud to be hosting the Distinguished Gentleman's Drive start route for London, the West London one. So we've got all the guys that come out in their pre-80s cars, all dressed to the nines, guys and gals. And then we're doing a drive out to the Bromont factory out in Henley. And then going forward, we've got loads of... we do lots of parties and kind of themed events here with the Plonkers Bar, and so collaborate with them on that. So we've got a big Halloween party coming up. We've got a big end of summer party at the end of this month, next Saturday. And then on the third Sunday of every month, continually, we've got our classics and cake meets. So from 9 a.m. till 1 p.m, doors are open. It's £10 a ticket per car, and that all goes to charity. And we just encourage everyone to come down to bring their cars down. There's no real... We're very loose on the categorization of what's eligible and not. With a certain, which as long as everyone's well behaved, we're not really fussed. But generally, it's something classic or modern performance car, something interesting too. And then we've got we do the Porsche night every other month. We're organising a big driving tour for flat 12 Ferraris in a couple of weekends' time. So 365 BB, 512 BB, Testarossa, the 512 TR, and the 512 Ms. So we've got a nice uptake on that. And always some niche and weird and wonderful things going on. We've got a link on our website. It's just dukeoflondon.co.uk, where everything's publicised on there, and there's a calendar on there of the events that get rolled out usually a month or two in advance. And then on socials as well, we share everything on there.
So I'll put the Instagram and the website in the comments below on the sort of podcast notes.
Cool, thank you.
Final question: dream car? Do you have one? Sounds like you're living the dream at the moment, anyways.
It's been it's a tricky one. There's a few things that I would like to do and build and whatever, but I think I'm quite content. I think one car that really has thrown me, I've touched on it already, was the Testarossa. I kind of thought, this can drive like a sack of shit and it'll be funny for 5 minutes, and I think they're cool looking and that's it. I've genuinely bonded so much with that car. It's the one car that I've got now that I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever sell this. Might have to one day or whatever, but right now I'm really kind of digging that. I a lot more than I ever thought I would. And it's funny because a lot of people who have driven them for I drove one of those once, they're terrible or whatever, versus people who've actually owned, driven and lived with them. They're all kind of in the same camp. They're like, there's something kind of cool and special about them. They are like awful to drive on paper, but I don't know, there's just something really cool and charming about it. So that's right now, I'm pretty happy with that. I haven't got any big ambitions at the moment, trying to focus on kind of the move and building the new place. So that's probably saving my bank account as well in many ways, and also hindering it in others. But
Have you seen the Testarossa that I think he's a Japanese chap, Mad Lane Kazuki, I think his name is?
Yeah,
he's put it on, like he slammed it on air ride, and I think he's deep dish to wheels and things like that. It looks
like a cartoon. It doesn't look real. Yeah,
I get air ride, but I get it in certain aspects. But I think that one is quite cool.
It is very cool.
I like the colour of yours as well.
Thank you. But the Japanese one it looks almost like like a sort of CGI drawing or some sort of like cartoon sketch. But fair play to him.
Merlin, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate the episode and enjoyed it.
No, thank you for having me on. Really enjoyed it.